another day, a conversation between a practicing Jew and a wandering Jew. And of course, you've grown to know by now who is which. Rabbi Levi Cunin, say hello, please, to our guests.
Welcome to our guests. It's good to be here another day.
Thank you.
Especially for Michael, my dear friend.
And my dear friend, Rabbi Levi Cunin. We've been having this conversation for several years, in fact, even longer than that. The conversation we thought we could have with everybody. And that's really why we're here, to have this conversation with everybody. And understand we don't believe that everybody who's watching us is a Jew. But you understand it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew or not, if you understand the gap that resides between those who are truly committed to God, truly live with God, and those of us who sort of do, or maybe don't at all. There is a gap, and that gap expresses itself in so many obvious ways. That's what we truly wish to discover here in our conversation with each other. I'll be very, very candid with you all that truthfully, my personal wish to be here is to discover how I can become that practicing Jew that Levi has become all his life. And there's so much resistance within me to becoming a practicing Jew. And in my selfish interest, I thought perhaps having this conversation every day with Rabbi Cunin could in fact give me the impulse to go beyond what I've gone beyond when I've been inspired to become a practicing Jew in such a manner that would inspire me to actually seriously pursue being the practicing Jew that Rabbi Levi Cunin is. So that's my selfish motivation. And I don't know if it's possible, because even as I speak to you at this moment, I'm experiencing the split in myself, that split in myself that is so driven by the opposite interest, to actually separate myself from being a Jew. When in fact, even as I say that, that's not really true. It's not separate myself from being a Jew. It's separate myself from the discipline that is called for to read Torah every day, to practice as Rabbi Levi Cunin and every practicing Jew practices every day. To me, there is such an enormous resistance. I feel it right here, almost in my gut, this resistance to being obligated to do what every practicing Jew does. So that's a great driver of this conversation. Rabbi Cunin, what do you have to say about that?
Rabbi Chol, it just brought to memory a story and a little joke.
Sorry, I'm laughing and as you begin to talk, because on the one hand, I feel there's so much judgment that you would have what I just said, and in fact, there's no judgment at all. It reminds you of a story, and every time I talk to you, it reminds you of a story. And you begin to tell me that story, and it's just astonishing to me that you have a story for everything I ever say.
What can I tell you? It reminds me of a story. But more importantly, the joke.
Go on.
So making a long story short, I actually ended up at doing the memorial service for a Jew who lived his entire life as an atheist. I only got to know him in the last 2 years of his life. He was an amazing human being. And at his memorial, actually his memorial was on the Jay Leno stage. Jay Leno was there. And most of the people there were not Jewish. There were plenty of Jews there. But everybody was shocked to see a Chabad rabbi at the service. I mean, his name was Ted, and a very, very dear friend of mine brought us together. But the irony that there's a Chabad rabbi, so I knew I had to, kind of give at least a little bit of background. So I shared with them the following story of 2 Jewish students that fell in love with each other on some campus. Both of them were self-ascribed atheists. So they decided to move to a faraway place where they could live their lives and completely not have to deal with the whole Jewish factor. Well, it so happened to be in that particular city, there was a really great a really great school, an academic school, but it also was Christian. But they, they were atheists and they're concerned, but they decided, because of all the great ratings it had for its math and its English, etc., they sent their child there. Kid comes home after 2 weeks of school and says, "Dad, guess what I found out?" He says, "What is?" He says, the school was named the School of Trinity. He says, "I found out what the Trinity stands for." And he starts to share it with his dad. And his dad says, "Son, we got to go on a walk." He says, "I want you to listen to me. And I want you to listen to me very carefully. There's only one God in this world, and we don't believe in him." And to me, that's the definition of a Jewish atheist or the Jewish doubt, because it really goes back to what I shared with you in the last time that we were together, is that we all have that going on within us. And the part that I'm talking about is the neshama, the soul, that you've felt many times in your life. The only reason why you don't feel it all the time is because that's part of the reason why we're here. It's for us to go through that journey. But all we have to do is to remember that time when tears flow down our eyes in connection in a way that our rational mind can't explain, but our heart knows. So that's my response to you. Your struggle is our struggle. All of us go through it in our own way. All of us are up against something called doubt. It's our biggest enemy, and that's part of our journey. The good news is that we have the tools to overcome it. And the most powerful part of it is it all begins with a good action. Just taking an action that's aligned with that higher self engages it and invites it to permeate us in a deeper way.
But this question came to me very, very early this morning, an hour before we started our conversation. This question came to me, how do we know there's a God? Literally, just like that. How do we know there's a God? Because when I speak to you, there's no question in your mind about whether God exists. You've been raised from the very beginning of your life that God exists. God permeates everything you do. And in my mind, as a wandering Jew, as Michael E. Gerber, as the person you're watching sitting in front of you, I don't feel that. In fact, I was going to say something more about that, but it's true. I don't feel that. And
Now,
yes.
meaning, is that true of all of time, or you're saying you never feel it, or you don't feel it now? Meaning there are times you do and there are times you don't.
Well, truthfully, as I'm sitting here with you, I feel, I'll say it now, but I can't honestly say that what I feel is the God you speak about, Hashem you speak about, in the way that you speak about God. So when you told that joke, there's only one God and we don't believe in him. I laugh at that joke because it so moves me. But at the same time, it's so absolutely true that it sounded like something I would say. There's only one God. But I wouldn't say I don't believe in him, because I would never have come to that place to say, I don't believe in him. I just don't know him. I don't know him. Let me say that again. I just don't know him. And so I sit in wonderment and a bit of skepticism that you can, other than that you've made it a habit to, by simply practicing. Being a Jew. So speak to me about that.
So I want to share with you an idea in Jewish mysticism, which I think is important. And I know that, our time is short, so my words have to be short, but I encourage all of our visitors, your watchers, to go onto Chabad.org and check out the Jewish mysticism there. So Moses, 3,330 plus years ago, when he brought the Torah to the Jewish people, and all of the Jewish people were present to the miracle. There were 2.5 million witnesses to the 10 Commandments that saw it live and felt it. So when Moses brought the message, Moses said, you should know, you have been shown to know that God is our God and there is none else but him. And he uses the word to know. Now, let's get clear over here. When we talk about belief in God, the first premise is that we don't know. Because what could us minimal, such small creatures of as great as our possibilities are, how could we possibly know our maker? But yet, Moses is telling us you have been shown to know. And that conversation is in Kabbalah, that we don't get to know God, we get to feel God. But in knowing, in the realm of knowing, what we do get to know is the medium through which we can actually accomplish exactly what you're talking about in our minds. In other words, not something we fight against, but something that supports a deep understanding of what it means to be created and what it is that we're doing here, our purpose and our mission. And that is where the gap gets lessened, is through the study, specifically of the esoteric teachings of the Torah, that open up the mind to understand our reality in a way that is not yet known to the general public. It's getting known because it's translated, etc. But meanwhile, it's not yet known, but it's so profound that no one will have to convince you in terms of the passion that drives the people who learn this and the people who practice it. Does that make sense?
Well, it does in a way, and I'm saying it in a way. So this is the first time I've actually had this conversation. I've never had this conversation growing up. I've never had this conversation with our rabbi way back when I had a rabbi who was not really my rabbi, but he was the rabbi of the synagogue. And it always felt like there was an enormous distance between that rabbi, who in my mind was a social creature, not a religious creature. I never felt that he was connected to God in what I imagined to be a spiritual way. I felt he was a social leader. And I didn't even think of him as a leader. I just thought he was a social man who was in a position called the rabbi of our particular synagogue. And I had no more understanding of him than that. And nor would I ever go to him and say, I don't believe you. You understand what I meant when I say, I don't believe you? I don't believe you. I don't believe what you're saying. I don't believe that you're even experiencing it in a way that is different from just a social reality. I don't believe you. In fact, that was the rabbi that I went to when, believe it or not, I decided I wanted to become a rabbi. No.
You finally got there. Baruch Hashem.
I wanted to become a rabbi, and I met with him in his office, him behind his desk, me in the chair in front of the desk, as though I was in a business office. And he had all the appropriate books and so forth on the shelves. And he asked me why I wanted to become a rabbi, and I don't recall what my answer was. But whatever that answer was, he suggested that I do not become a rabbi. That it wouldn't be.
He didn't want the competition.
That I don't become a rabbi. That was the essence of that conversation. And I swear, Levi, I have no memory about any of this. I don't experience it as I'm telling you. It's just a story that I remember, but it's not an experience that I remember. That's truly the reality of my life. My life isn't an experience that I remember. It's stories that I might tell about my life, but I don't remember any of it. So even when I speak about being raised as a Jew, but not being raised as a Jew, in reality, it's distant from me. And I don't even believe I was there, truly there, during any of it. I even question whether I'm here during any of this. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. And that's, I just want to first of all, I think we're running up against the clock.
Okay.
But I do want to say that you should know that in the narrative that I'm sharing with you, one of the most quintessential points of it is that the beauty of the light that we are here to shine, that's in us, that's explained in such a profound way, but the most beautiful part of it occurs when, despite our resistance, we choose to shine. And that is the ultimate light that we can do. That's why when I shared yesterday at the end, to do an act of goodness and kindness outside of ourselves, because that bottom line is that that's the ultimate way, that's the ultimate purpose. It's the ultimate joy that the Maker has from these creatures that are us, is that despite the fact that there's a part of us that resists it so badly, that we choose to reject the doubt and walk in the light, that's the ultimate joy that the Maker has, as the Maker described it in the Torah.
Levi,
So you're doing over the top.
Levi, thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Yes, 20 minutes goes so quickly, does it not? There's so much to talk about and so little time to do it. We love you all. We'll see you tomorrow.